Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by Cool70.com, Mana Traders, as well as Twitch subs and Patreon supporters just like you. My name is Evan Irwin, and get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Power Dragon.
What's up, everybody? We are now way into wading through the forest of Bloomburrow at this point, and it's crazy.
It looks great. Ruben Bressler.
Hey, what's going on? I love Bloomburrow. They're doing even better of a job with it than I thought.
And the hype has been real. The sales are fantastic. The sales have been fantastic. The sales from the day that that Cool Stuff put up Bloomburrow for pre-order were like, wow, these numbers are wow. You know, we know like nothing but the Mabel or whatever at the time that we'd heard about, and that was about it. And so, to barrel on into some mechanics and some cards and some previews. We're not picking out our 3 this week. We'll start that next week as the set continues to roll on here. But we're going to go over some of the articles that they threw out there. For example, the Bloomburrow mechanics article we want to go off first. So, when they were previewing, sort of talking about the set, and kind of hyping it up, they said they have the cutest mechanic that they had ever made. And you're like, the cutest mechanic? What does that mean? And then I saw Offspring, and I was like, that is the cutest mechanic I have ever seen. Offspring is a optional ability for a mana cost, and as you pay an additional cost of that as you cast the spell, if you do, you make it, as this creature enters, you make a 1/1 token copy of it. So Tender Wild Guide is on the screen. This is a new awesome mana dork for a green and generic mana. It's a 2/2 rare possum druid with Offspring of 2 generic mana. Again, you may pay an additional 2 generic mana as you cast it. And from what I can tell, you can only pay it once.
The one time. Yeah.
Just the one time.
Yeah.
You tap to add 1 mana of any color, or you tap to put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. And so now you're going to have tokens like they have up here on the screen, if you can see it, of Tender Wild Guide that has all the same text, except this token's mana cost is that mana cost right there at the bottom, because if you put it up at the top, it's going to look like a magic card, and it's going to be a little weird.
Yeah.
But I think this mechanic's dope.
Yeah. Mechanic's incredible. It's kicker without being kicker, but it's also very specific kicker that allows you to have a second copy of the text box on the board. So the first one that I saw was the 4/4 for 4 rabbit. It kind of is like a Leonin War Leader in essence. But you can have another one that's a 1/1, which is great. I think that these are all, each of them that are like, whenever you do a thing, make some small incremental value, but if you pay 2 additional colorless, you get twice as much value. Those are all incredible.
I'll tell you what I like about it, though, is, we've been in this world where there are infinite board sweepers. I mean, hell, we even got, I think, 2 more already, and we hadn't even seen the whole set yet. And this now allows you to go, you know what? Maybe I'm only going to play 3 things, but I might end up with like 5 creatures. Which I really like. So you can kind of sandbag a little more, still get some stuff on the battlefield. And it's not like you just got another token. You got an actual copy of another creature that does a thing. So it gives you a little bit of extra reach for the creature decks against this wall of sweepers that we've been running into. So I actually kind of dig it. It's got a lot of little uses to it.
Yeah, the Warren War Leader is up on the screen now. It's one of the new mythics for the set. And yeah, if you're spending 6 mana, then I'm okay with you getting a 4/4 and a 1/1 that has all the same abilities, which I think is rad. And it just lets you not only be like sort of super cute and that you're making a small version of this already, like the parent, and the child version, but also just kind of, helps you expand as the game goes on and increase the stakes without making these cards busted. You're just getting an extra copy. And it's also, they're 1/1s, so they're super easy to get rid of.
Right.
Gift is up next. And I love this mechanic because it's just one of those, like, it's a cute world. And you give gifts to your friends. And for example, this is going to be amazing in multiplayer formats because you gift as a cost of some sort. So Kitnap, not kid, Kitnap,
right,
with the little raccoon right there, is 2 blue and 2 generic mana, another control magic variant. It is a rare enchantment aura and has gift a card. You may promise an opponent a gift as you cast this spell. If you do, when it enters, they draw a card. And it has enchant creature. When Kitnap enters, tap enchanted creature. If the gift wasn't promised, so if you did not give them a card, you put 3 stun counters on it. And the last sentence there, you control enchanted creature. So you don't have to give them a card, but if you do, you just control magic and just tap the creature while you did so. And that's awesome. That's great rates.
Yeah, I also had to look up how many things are referred to as kits, and apparently a crap ton. So, like cats, foxes, raccoons, I think rabbits, skunks, like never use that term to describe them, but now I know that it's a thing. So, thank you, Magic.
Nice, nice. So yeah, I like the idea of gifts here. For example, Parting Gust is another awesome removal spell for 2 white mana. It is an uncommon instant. You may gift a tapped fish, a 1/1 blue fish, tap to your opponent if you want to. You exile target non-token creature. If the gift wasn't promised, return that creature to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it at the beginning of the next end step. And so if you gift them a 1/1 fish, you just got rid of their best creature, or you just don't do that and you just exile their thing and you get in for a good swing, or you target your stuff so you can get an extra enters trigger and go from there. This card is dope.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with any of these at all. I think they're pretty good. I think we'll have to be better about communicating when we cast these spells. You know, like that's going to be a real thing of just like on Arena, it won't be a problem because you'll have to choose it, you know, as you cast it or whatever. But face to face, we'll have to be very clear about these for sure.
Yeah, I think that gift, I mean, like you said, is much better in multiplayer formats because you're only giving the effect away to one player of your 3 opponents. But I think that overall the mechanic is brilliant. It is cute. It is smart. All of the things that you want.
Yeah, and I just think that's really rad. And I think it's also important that there's no, at least from what I can tell, seen so far, there's no delayed gift triggers. You know what I'm saying? There's no promise them something next turn or promise them something at the end of turn. You know what I mean? Like they're getting it as the spell is resolving. So you can't necessarily forget that, oh, you gifted me something, but I never got it, you know?
Yeah, a while back, we got away from anything you have to track. And that seems to be a thing they're sticking with. It just, if a thing happens, it happens now and it's done. You know, rarely are we getting stuff that's delayed till the next upkeep or whatever anymore.
All right. So between the gift giving and the child tending, it's time to forage, which is always fun. And forage is seen here on Osteomancer Adept, a black and a generic mana for a 2/2 rare squirrel warlock with death touch. And tap : until end of turn, you may cast creature spells from your graveyard by foraging in addition to paying their other costs. If you cast a spell this way, that creature enters with a finality counter on it. And to forage, you exile 3 cards from your graveyard or sacrifice a food. If a card with a finality counter on it would die, you exile it instead.
Yeah. This card in particular, like Forage is a very clever and cute ability. I think that it is neat. I don't know that it is broken. Sort of gives like a limited like Underworld Breach effect, sort of, which is very cool. This card in particular is possibly busted. This card in particular, if it survives or has haste, allows you to play everything in your graveyard in an aggro deck again. Right? Like you play this on turn 4, and then on turn 5, you activate it, and then put 4 creatures that died back into play in your sort of like self-mill kind of deck, right?
If you self-mill
well, no, because you have to, because
make enough
you have to remove
tokens.
3 things from the graveyard.
Right, or sacrifice a food token.
Yeah.
So if you have played things like, you know, any of the black creatures that make food, or you just have some sort of way to generate that, in addition to fetch lands or you know, removal spells or things like that, I think that this card in particular is spectacular.
They could have put in some like stop gaps on this if they wanted to, like for example, target creature card in your graveyard. But no, it just says until end turn you may cast creature spells.
Yeah.
Any creature spells you like, as long as you can forage, you're good. Go nuts. And that's a little dangerous. And honestly, that's how I like my Magic cards. You know,
we have to forage and pay their costs, so it's not. I mean, it's still balanced, but it's good. Right. It's definitely good.
Still very good.
Yeah, and I like that is the black green squirrel's ability. I think it makes perfect sense. It fits in the world. It uses a resource that we've not really seen before. I think it's great.
Yeah, they're and now we have what I would describe as kind of heroic plus. Heroic was the thing for a while there, or well, definitely for a while there for in Theros, that said, you know, when you cast a spell that targets this creature, well, we've bumped that up now to if a spell or a ability you control. For the first time each turn, it does something. So
Yes.
I think that's really rad. We have Seaglaive Mentor here. It's a white, red, and a generic mana for a 3/2 uncommon mouse soldier with vigilance and haste. 3 mana, 3/2 vigilance and haste. I'm already on board. But when it
That's
becomes
a Boggart Ramgang almost.
right, when it becomes a target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. That is easy peasy, lemon squeezy to pull off. Like,
Yes.
not difficult to make this a 4/3 haste vigilance trample, or vigilance haste rather, which is still fantastic.
So Mercenaries from Outlaws of Thunder Junction was one of the first things that came to mind when I saw Valiant.
There you go.
Because those are very easy to get on the board. There's a million ways to make those 1/1 tokens. This also allows for, if your opponent targets it, it gets the counter. So anytime that it is targeted for the first time in a turn, this would get the counter, the creature would get the benefit, you'd make a token, whatever it is with Valiant. So this does a number of things. One, it makes tap abilities better. Tap abilities that target your own creatures better, specifically. Two, it fixes one of the issues that Heroic had, which is Heroic, you just kind of wanted to jam a bunch of 1-mana combat tricks into your deck. This allows you to pick and choose your combat tricks. You don't necessarily only need to care about their casting cost.
Yeah, I think it's like it's a give and take with both abilities, right? Because Heroic, you could get multiples in a turn. But with Valiant, we now have this thing where maybe I'm just going to put a couple of one cost equipment in the deck, right? So pre-combat, move it from you to you to you. Everybody triggers. We get in there and attack, right? That's a thing you couldn't do with Heroic. So it's definitely going to play differently, and the deck constructions are going to be very different. But already it looks like the mice all either benefit from or have an ability that targets something.
Oh, it does say only you control.
Yeah. So they're gonna really be able to do some stuff with these and have some pretty crazy aggro moves. I mean, you're gonna be attacking on like turn 2 for 4 damage in a lot of cases. Like, it's gonna get kind of wild.
Yeah, I'm totally down for that, which is awesome. And I believe the last one here is Expend, which I think, at least for me, when I first read it, it felt like, is this weirdly complicated? Then I go, oh, wait, no. It's just counting. You're just counting the amount of mana you're spending on spells. So Junkblade Bruiser here is one of the signpost commons. It is 2 green-red hybrid mana and 3 generic mana, so 5 mana total, for a 4/5 common Raccoon Berserker with trample. And when you expend 4, it gets +2/+1 until end of turn, turns into a 6/6. You expend 4 as you spend your 4th total mana to cast spells during a turn. So this can happen during a combat step. This can happen at instant speed, whenever, during somebody else's step, as long as you're spending 4 mana at a time. And this can be over 2 cards, 3 cards, 4 cards. Doesn't matter, as long as you count up to that number, and then boom, it fires off.
Yeah.
The best thing about that ability is that there's already some creatures that, when you hit that trigger, they exile some stuff, so you have spells loaded for next turn. There's some that generate extra mana. So they've thought about that already, to let the ability fuel itself within the decks. So once you get going, if they don't get rid of your key creatures that are on the board, like, you could end up really going ham on 2 or 3 turns back to back.
Yeah, this is it only triggers once each turn. So if you spend 4 and then 4 more, that don't happen. It's just the one time you count to the number. Once you hit the number thing happens, and off you go. Which is cool. And it could have been spells that you cast no matter what happened to them. They could have been resolved, not resolved, countered, whatever. As long as you're counting that mana cost, I think that's super cool too. Because that makes it feel less bad if you run into a counter spell, because you're still doing something, right? The last bit here is an absolutely brilliant way to create modal spells, while also perplexing me as to why we would want to use symbols that are so closely aligned with the set itself. Take a look at these paw print cards that are the season cards. There's a whole cycle of these. And as a Season of Weaving, for example, 2 blue, 4 generic mana for a mythic sorcery, a 6 mana mythic sorcery, you know it's going to be good, and it is. It says, choose up to 5 paw print worth of modes. You may choose the same mode more than once. For 1 paw, you can draw a card. So for 6 mana, you can draw 5 cards. That's awesome. For 2 paws, you can choose an artifact or creature you control, create a token that's a copy of it. You can do that 2 times and still draw a card to pay your 5 paw print amount. And lastly, for 3 paws, return each non-land token permanent to its owner's hand. And each non-land non-token permanent is a lot. But again, you can also draw 2 cards and do that. Or you can make a copy and then do that, return all non-token, non-land cards to their owner's hands. So again, this is a really unique way to do modal spells. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And the only thing that's killing me is like, is this the last time we're going to see this? Or is this only going to show up in Bloomburrow sets and Bloomburrow cards? Because why couldn't this have been a generic star or a magic M? I don't care what it is, just something
Yeah,
that would have been more
planeswalker symbol,
generic.
whatever.
Sure, whatever
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah, I don't know that a paw is so specific that it could not work in another set. I mean, obviously, it wouldn't make as much sense in a Kamigawa, but you could still theoretically just have a season in any plane. I think it's fine.
Yeah, these feel like, on the one hand, I go, all right, they're sorceries, they cost a lot. But man, the other side is like, you could do some really silly things with these cards for the cost. So they might be better than I think a lot of us are giving kind of real credit to on these. But we'll see. We'll see for sure.
And something important that Pharmacist Judge noted, you don't get to like bank the paws. You know what I'm saying? You
Yeah.
can't like Season of Weaving for 1 card and then you still have 4 paws out there just hanging out like energy counters.
Yeah.
No, you get the paws, you got to use the paws, you spend the paws. Like that's just how you do it. And they've got a whole cycle of these things and they're super rad and I love them. And let's see how many we got here on Scryfall so far. We've got
3?
season.
I think I saw 3.
Is there 3 on there?
Yeah, and those are at least 2 because one of them's the black one.
Right. There's season
Black, red, and blue.
Right. There's black, red, and blue so far. Season of the Bold for red. And, you know, again, it's rad and I think it's cool. And the black one is super neat. You can, for example, make each player sacrifices 5 creatures for 5 mana.
I felt like the
huge.
red one feels like it was not as great as the other ones.
Sure.
Something has to be the worst,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
But
the black one was like 1 paw print, each player sacks a creature, 2 paw prints, draw a card for each creature you control that died. So you could theoretically go, each player sacks 3 creatures, draw 3 cards.
for 5
Oh, dude,
example.
imagine if you're playing that in an aristocrat style deck.
Yeah.
right?
Where you're just like, yeah, I want my stuff to die, whatever.
Yeah, sicko.
Yeah, and the last for the just to let round out season loss for our audio listeners is 3 paws. Each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. And again, all of these things happen in order based on how you've chosen them. And you know, I think that's really rad. I don't know else to kind of put that. You know, let's draw some cards and let's kill some creatures. That seems super cool. For the red one, either for 1 paw, you make a tap treasure token. For 2, you exile the top 2 cards. You can play them until the end of your next turn. And for 3, until the end of your next turn, whenever you cast a spell, it deals 2 damage to up to 1 target creature. So this to me is a limited bomb because that last ability in limited is going to be absolutely bananas.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't necessarily see this in constructed as much, and I'm kind of okay with that, you know?
Yeah. I think they're all limited bombs. I don't know that any of them are particularly stick out to me in constructed. Like 6 mana sorcery, draw 5 cards is not the most exciting thing I've ever seen.
No, but when you're making 2 copies of things or whatever and drawing a card, maybe that's enough. You know, we'll see.
Yeah, and I would say like the Azorius control decks have been alternating a bunch of different cards in and out in standard.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be a little looking for some new answers for them because you are losing like the Marches, you're losing Wandering Emperor, you know, so they'll probably be experimenting with some different things.
Yeah. And while we're looking at a few cards, I did want to note one of my favorites. This is, and it's got none of the mechanics on it. I just think it's a wonderful design. Beza the Bounding, Beza the Bounding,
Beza the Bounding.
Spring. Beza the Bounding Spring is 2 white, 2 generic mana for a mythic legendary elemental elk. It's a 4/5. When it enters, you create a treasure token tapped. I'm sorry, you just take a treasure token if an opponent has more lands. You gain 4 life if they have more life. You make 2 1/1 blue fish creature tokens if they have more creatures. And you draw a card if an opponent has more cards in hand than you. For 4 mana, for a 4/5, value on value on value on value. Let's go. This card is.
Yeah, I really read this card and I just stared at it for a second and was like, why? Like, I mean, that's all I could think was just like, why? Why is all this on a 4/5 creature
Right.
for 4?
Why are
like,
all of these things happening?
Yeah, like I'm just like this, like in any type of blink deck or whatever, like this thing's bananas, right? Like,
Yeah, let's go.
For sure.
because you're always getting like you can keep doing it till you get to parity on the thing you're trying to get to parity on, but like it's gonna be some number of cards, treasure, tokens, whatever. And it's just a sizable body. Even if you just are playing an aggro deck, you're just like, you know what? F it. This is gonna be my 4-drop in the deck. Because
Like,
I'm probably getting something when I cast it.
if you play, like I do, a lot of best of one constructed on a Magic Arena, I cannot tell you how many times you run smack in the face of red, mono red decks all day long.
Sure.
And this is the thing you want to play against all of those stupid red decks. Oh, I'll gain 4 life and make 2 more creatures go?
Mhm.
Sounds good. If I ever blink this, you're going to hate everything and I'm going to probably win that game. Let's go. Like, love this thing.
This
when
is
when is it bad though? Like
Right.
again, even against playing aggro against control, you're like, well, I get a 4/5 and a card.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
There was
if nothing else.
there was
right?
I played a lot of Sunset Cavalry in sideboards, which was this, but without the 4/5 and without a part of it. I forget which part. but,
without
like,
3 parts of it. Like,
No, there were
Without
three.
the-
There were
without the
3
treasure
things.
tokens, right?
yeah.
Without the treasure token. But there were 3 things on Sunset Cavalry that I loved. Then there was also like Call the Cavalry or something like that was like make 3 1/1s, play this only if you have fewer
Oh
creatures.
yeah, Sunset
Timely-
Revelry.
Timely
Because you
reinforcement.
make
Timely
two-
reinforcements. That's the one.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Which was also great. So to have it attached to a 4/5, so like 4 mana for 6 power, maybe.
I love it. I love
That's pretty
everything.
good.
The fact that this is a total catch up is
Mhm.
just fantastic, right? This is the top
Right.
deck that you're hoping for. Like, if I can just get a Beza, just bam.
And here's
you know?
another question: if you're playing a white creature-based deck in Commander, it's an auto win, right?
Oh yeah,
Right.
Because like I'm
fantastic.
probably getting
You
at
get
least
everything.
3 things off of
You're
it,
going to get everything. You know it.
right? Like
Someone's going to
yeah,
have more
just like,
cards. Someone's going to have more creatures, and someone's going to have more lands. Like,
isn't that crazy?
that's amazing.
Yeah, this card's not so. It's absolutely not so.
And I love that. Let's do more of that. To go over a little bit here of some different cards, they were talking about how to collect the set. Wizards, I think, is still trying to crack the code on how to explain the different way to this day, ever since Eldraine, to this day, to try to fully explain to you where things are at and how you get them. And I think they've gotten a lot better at it. I think the image gallery has gotten way, way, way better with where you can find things. And this is sort of yet another different way of showing you, hey, here's how you can find stuff and where to find stuff. First of all, Courageous Critters, y'all. New critter versions of Planeswalkers, including Jace the freaking Mind Sculptor.
Yep.
In a commander deck, first of all. It's going to be art in all the commander decks. And the extended art versions and stuff are going to be in collector packs. But Jace the Mind Sculptor as a fox, y'all.
Very good.
What does the fox say? I mean, they're
Sly as a
songs.
fox.
Tell
Yeah,
you what.
yeah.
That's right.
But yeah, I thought that was brilliant. Nissa, who shakes the world, is a giant frog. Like, incredible. Tameo is amazing. This Tameo field researcher is the rabbit.
The rabbit. Yeah.
Yep, with
for
the
sure.
big floppy ears.
Oh my God, I love it. It is absolutely fantastic. So, whoever thought of,
There's a Ral that's an otter, and then the Nissa who shakes the world is my favorite.
Yeah, the big frog.
The frog Nissa is absolutely my favorite.
Yep, absolutely terrific. I don't know who was like, hey, we should do critter versions of Planeswalkers, but God bless that person.
Yep.
Take them out for a steak dinner because they did it. They did it good. Fantastic. Now there's Japanese raised foil anime cards. And that's a lot of words, okay? That's a lot of words for a treatment. But it's fine, I guess. It's sort of another treatment that's kind of hard to explain on like a JPEG or whatever, Because like
people like their anime stuff though, so it's gonna go over.
It'll be great.
Yeah.
There's gonna be Japanese versions and Japanese collector boosters, which is fine too. And so it should be a big deal to open one of those. Good luck.
Mine just go up for trade or sale all the time because I don't care. Like, just like give me
Sure.
a playable regular version. But hey, other people love them. So
We now live in a world, and it still blows my mind, where non-foils are more than foils by default. And
mhm.
that kills me. It kills me for having been someone who worked so hard to build a cube that was full of all the shinies and to make it shiny and expensive and nice and whatever. And you're like, no, actually, those are the, not so great versions. You just want the regular.
Well, not for your cube because your cube probably has old foils in it, and those are worth more.
And they are, and that's nice. And I
Before
appreciate
they
that
ruined them.
before they ruined it. Now, I do want to note here, and we talked a little bit about in the pre-show. Is it Maha or Maha? Someone help me.
Miha
Is it Miha?
is how I was pronouncing it, right?
Either way, Maha.
Or sorry, Maha. You're right, not Miha.
Yeah.
I think it's Maha. Maha, it's Feather's Night. And you're like, it's Feather's Night? Isn't that just Shaka when the walls fell? And someone on Reddit from Wizards was like, absolutely. It was inspired by, that metaphor as language episode of Star Trek, The Next Generation. And I just absolutely love it. And the creature itself is incredible. For 2 black and 3 generic mana, it is a 6/5 mythic legendary elemental bird. It has flying and trample. It has flample. It has ward of discard a card, which is hodam. And creatures your opponents control have base toughness 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate it.
That's
That card's absurd.
That card's a
It is.
magic card. That's a wall.
So you don't even have to try to make this card good, right? Like, this card is good already by itself. 6/5 flying, trample, discard a card, doesn't even need the last line of text.
No, it doesn't.
For 5 mana.
Right.
Now, if we add the last line of text and we're playing a deck that is full of 1/1s and we chump attack into a bunch of 5/5s and then play this post combat, they still all die.
Yeah, they're still dead.
Much less if you have a pestilence in your deck.
Right.
Yeah, I think the issue, at least from a standard perspective, that it's going to have is probably like, would you rather have this or something like Aclazotz? Which is a real damn strong card. So I think they're going to be competing for space. So it's probably going to come down to, like, is it a bird themed deck or, whatever, whether it gets space or not. Because while it does give stuff 1 toughness, that doesn't kill the things. Now, in a world of Commander where you can play Karavek while all the creatures get -1/-1 or whatever.
Right.
Or
Knight of Souls
Elish
Betrayal.
Norn or whatever.
Knight of Souls Betrayal, so sick.
Yeah, like, then it becomes kind of silly. But for standard, I don't know if it's quite gonna push over yet or not.
Those are some really good abilities, though.
I agree.
Nothing on this thing is not at the highest rate. Nothing on this thing is not pushed as hard as they could push it. My God. Now, speaking of, and this came up in the chat, so we got to talk about it. The artifact cat, all right? Sort of what this is being described as.
The food cougar.
Yeah, Ygra. And this is one of those cards that, as I read it, and the first line, I was like, oh my God. Because you're like, how in the world would they? Oh. So Ygra, Eater of All, is a black, a green, and 3 generic mana. So 5 mana for a 6/6 legendary elemental cat. It has ward of sacrifice of food. And I was like, are you telling me I can never target this thing ever? And it's like, oh, no, 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 no. And then it says other creatures are food artifacts in addition to their other types and have 2 generic mana tapped. Sack this permanent, you gain 3 life. Whenever a food is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Ygra. So it's an 8/8 if you were to just sack the food to gain the life off of it. So first of all, the fact that everything else becomes an artifact is like a gigantic deal, and everyone's like flipping out over it. Have you seen this?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a bunch of ways to, like, Vandal Blast in the game, right? Like, Anzrag's Rampage is in standard right now, and you could just turn this into a 20/20 and attack with it. So there's a lot of interesting ways at the top end to make Ygra the best card ever. Even at current rate, 6/6 for 5 ward sacrifice, let's say a creature, that's still quite good.
I mean, it's good, but my issue is it also has 0 evasive abilities. So it's not trampling, it's not menace, so I've wrestled with it because I even in my Discord I've had people like, oh, have you seen this card and whatever. I was like, I want to be excited about it, I really do, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, but what else are we doing with 5 and 6 mana right now? And those can just punch through, right?
Sure.
Like, so what scenarios are we like? Are we playing this alongside squirrels that want you to have extra food, maybe? And you can take advantage of stuff that way. Now, I do like it as a sideboard card against some control decks because they don't have any creatures. So you just play this 6/6 duder that they, without sweeping the board, can't really deal with.
Mhm.
So that I like. Like you can talk me into that all day. But against other creature decks, I'm not totally sold on it just yet.
I like the suggestion in the chat that we just had that it goes, you can kill your opponent with 2 Cauldron Familiars because they turn themselves into food when they're in play. So that's pretty funny. So like a cat oven situation with a bigger cat would be
Sure,
functional,
but,
I
like,
suppose.
Were those decks having trouble killing you though without
No.
having a 5 mana thing? Like that's the thing. A lot of stuff people have suggested. I'm going like, but
Yeah.
those decks are already fine without this. So
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
what do we need it for?
That's my
Makes sense.
that is literally my favorite evaluation when somebody goes, we have a Splinter Twin situation, and we go, we've had a Splinter Twin situation
Yeah.
with this other card that was actually easier than this other one that you see now. So you're like,
Right,
it's cool, but it's not necessary.
right.
Yeah,
This
not
is like
quite.
complaining that Kiki Jiki was printed
Yeah.
if Splinter Twin had already been printed. Or like
Don't get me
this
wrong,
was
like,
yeah,
I do genuinely like this card. I think it's really
I think it's
cool
cool.
in its design.
it's very
Right.
cool.
I just don't like. I just don't know if it's as powerful as everybody's jumping to immediately. Because I'm like,
Sure.
let's clearly define what we're doing with this first before we can talk about how powerful it is.
Right? They're like, it's the greatest thing ever. I'm like, well, I mean, it's good, but
It's
Right.
fun.
It's got
I'll probably
cool-
still build a deck or two with it to try it out. You know.
yeah, I mean, it's got good numbers on it. I'll give you that. You know,
Yeah. I mean 5 cost 6/6 that becomes an 8/8 anytime anyone wants to target it. It's fine. It's good.
sure. I'll
Well, yeah,
take
but it's
that.
probably dead when somebody targets it.
Sure.
So like it
Yeah.
being an 8/8 doesn't matter. You know.
Sure. So yeah, 6/6 for 5, ward sacrifice a creature with no other abilities.
So yeah, so that was cool. And lastly, here in terms of like collecting or whatever, they have these like cool basic lands that have all the different seasons on them, and you know they get rarer as the seasons go on, which is a whole thing, which is neat. And yeah, it's really super rad, and I've been enjoying everything I've seen so far in terms of the stuff we went over.
And now when you buy collections, you're gonna have to look at basics even harder.
I mean, don't you always?
Yes.
Kinda. Now, one last thing here we want to talk about, which is where and how to play Bloomburrow, which kind of specifically goes over a lot of the promos. And if you haven't seen these things, goodness, this Lightning Bolt promo, which is fantastic. It's a Secret Lair promo, which is super cool. If you go to Gen Con events, it appears. So go to Gen Con, check out that, and get some free Lightning Bolt promos.
Okay.
There's a standing showdown thing we talked about before, the ossification.
Yeah.
Yeah, woohoo.
With Tiny Bones.
Yeah, Tiny Bones being awesome. And
My boy.
that's a great card.
Yeah.
Heirloom Blade for the Commander Party. Heirloom Blade, very popular card in that format. And look at that. Store Championship full art, or at least extended art Monastery Swift Spear. Like,
Beautiful.
absolutely fantastic.
And that clean text box.
Yep.
That's, I mean, anytime I see a text box that's just clean with no reminder text or flavor text that shows me a little bit of the extended art, that's what I love.
Love
I
it.
love that stuff.
A Shark Typhoon for those who make the top 8, which is always cool. And then we have, for the winner, a full art textless version of Urza's Saga. A card with no shortage of text. Now
Yeah.
a textless version.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we've done Omnath, Locus of All,
Mm-hmm.
right? We've done
Sakura Tribe Elder
we've done Cryptic Command.
with nothing.
Yeah.
Well, Tribe Elder, most people know the text of.
Yeah, you just sacrifice and get a basic, you know.
Right. I think that more people could know the text of Urza Saga than would know the text of either Cryptic Command or Omnath.
Yeah, I
That's
think
my hot
for the
take.
people that are invested in modern or whatever, and maybe even legacy at this point, like you see enough of the card and you play against it enough that you probably know at least roughly what it does.
And I mean, it still would be like kind of quite the flex, right? You play this
For
on
sure.
turn one, and then they call the judge, and you're like, oh no, you got to learn what my Texas card does because I got first place at my store champs. Like,
Darn. Rats.
wow, that's a bummer. So that
Let me
is
let me
super
say
rad.
this though. For people who haven't been going to play in these standard store champs at your stores, like a lot of these events are still getting, less than 12 people.
Yeah,
And the first place prizes are significant money.
yeah.
I imagine this is also going
Agreed.
to be a $150 card or so.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
Right.
oh yeah.
Because
For
I mean
sure.
the Dolphy Voidwalker is still, I think, 120.
Oh, yeah.
I still have one of the oversized cards from the last one that somebody's offered me $100 for. So it's
Nice.
like these are like you show up, you play for 2-3 hours, and you're done. Hell, I went to one; it was just round robin. There was like 6 of us,
Oh my god.
right? So we played like 4 rounds and then picked a winner.
Yeah.
So it's just like go play in these things, y'all. A bunch of them are cheap or free. They're just trying to get people playing standard again, and the prizes are stupid.
Yeah, they're juicing it. You know what I mean? These are juiced cards that are pushed to get butts in seats. They want those butts in seats. They're like, here, take one of the most expensive, most powerful lands in modern and go get you one. And it's going to be probably $200 or so, I'm guessing.
Wouldn't surprise me.
150 to 200. Is that worth a couple hours of your time? You know what I mean? Probably. I'd hope so.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as we move out of the first pick, again, Bloomburrow is terrific. Can't wait to talk about it some more. We're going to move on to gather the townsfolk thanks to our sponsor, Mana Traders, the best tool to enhance your Magic Online experience. Use the code MagicMikes_8N48 November 4 for 10% off your next subscription with Mana Traders. Tell them we sent you. Enjoy the broad swath, as we are about to talk about, of decks that you could play. And in particular, recently, what had happened was the Magic Online team, now ran by, I think it was Daybreak, right?
Yep.
Daybreak
Mhm.
Games. And they decided to publish all the deck lists for their events or their leagues or whatever it was. Like, here's everything that was played on these events or whatever. That didn't last very long. All of a sudden, that was taken down. And it was like, what happened? And they were like, oh, okay, well, now they're going to give you the top 32 decks of scheduled events and a selection of 5-0 league lists displayed going forward. And that's apparently back online sort of as we speak here. But it goes to it goes to a battle. It goes to a battle that I've seen rage on for more or less the last 14 years of my life. The fact that I've been doing this professionally, talking about Magic all this time, there is something about all deck lists being shown that Wizards has never been fully comfortable with. And I often don't understand it because in that period of time, which is what they did, post all the lists, I didn't see anything break. I didn't see anybody freaking out. I didn't see any formats die or have issues that didn't already have issues, you know? But here we are to less
Yeah, but
information.
I don't know. I mean, like, I just feel like it doesn't change much anyway to even just curate to say top 32 and the 5-0s because that's all anybody cares about anyway. I mean, at the end of the day, it's
At
just
which
going to make the
point-
pages take longer to load and eat up more server space. Just have all the deck lists. Like, it just doesn't do anything. Like,
Sure.
nobody's going on and going, I want to see the I don't know, whatever deck that went 1 and 5 or whatever. Like, nobody's looking for that. So it's like, I get we're having the argument that like just give us everything, but like who's really going to look at everything?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, the Frank Carsons of the world will probably look at everything.
Of course they
Like,
are.
I mean, like there will be a few people, yes.
There's
But
a couple
realistically,
there's
you know,
a couple
who's the-
arguments to post everything. The two main arguments are what happened with Ruby Storm at the Pro Tour last weekend or 2 weekends ago, which is it was a not insignificant part of the metagame, but fell flat on its face. If we only publish the top 32 and the 5-0s, we never learn what the failures are. We never know why, like we don't get the full context of what the food chain looks like of why this other deck became a top dog, for example.
Like you wouldn't have the whole matchup percentages, right? Like
Sure,
down
sure.
to a T, for example.
Right. The second reason is very often a diamond in the rough appears that is in the top 64 and then takes off the following weeks or month. The one that comes to mind for me is Lantern Control,
Mhm.
which, started out not great but then proceeded to start taking off. Another one would be the Goblin Bombardment deck that Sam Black played for a couple Grand Prix in a row in the mid 2000s. Started out not great and then proceeded to be good going forward. Now, those two data sets are for events that had 1,000 people in it, so it's
Sure.
less relevant than the dailies. But the point remains that there is data to be gleaned. Just because it is harder to get that data and you need to look closer, doesn't mean that it's not relevant. Now, the flip side. You're right. It is mostly not relevant. 90% of the people going to the Decklist page wants to see what was in the top 8. 90% of the people going to the Decklist page wants to see the 5-0s. And if you can save person hours and computer megabytes and space and time loading the web page, then yeah, I don't need to see every 05 and 14.
Now,
So there's a lot of people that don't even look at the top 32. I mean, to your point, I think if it's outside of the top 8 or 16, they just be like, whatever.
Allow me to explain sort of the reason I think it's important. I think it's important from the aspect of the history of the game. Every event, and particularly a large event, is a snapshot. You know what I mean? It's a picture in time. Magic always changes, will always change every new release and every new metagame and every new ban and all that other stuff. Everything. And on this moment, and we have it now at the Pro Tour with that, entire deck list, entire information of the entire event. And that's cool because that, to me, it's an important snapshot of the event. And sometimes those snapshots are not 400 people. Sometimes those snapshots are a 64, 128 person league or whatever. But it gives you the idea of what were we playing on that day? What were we playing and didn't work on that day? You know what I mean? Because the Ruby Storm or whatever. We may not know that all of a sudden the creature decks got smashed in the leagues during this period of time because the control decks kind of took over. You can see that, you can map that. That to me, sort of from a historical perspective, is really interesting. And so that's why, even if it were a timed release, and I've spoken about this before years ago, where I was like, even if you just let us get all the data after the next set comes out, for the entire previous season or whatever, again, there's only going to be so many Frank Carsons in the world who's going to give a damn about the 05s. But sometimes you're like, wow, this was a cool idea, but it didn't work out. Wow, this was a cool idea, but maybe this new card from the new set could make it work. Somebody tried something different. And that's what I look for when I go through all those deck lists, is give me something I haven't seen. And often you'll find that in the top 64s of the big events or the top 128s of the big events. And from a historian, I like Magic's history perspective, I want to see what happened there. And it's weird to me that there's nothing that I can sort of throw out there as an option that they're okay with, because from a historical perspective, I think we're missing something.
That's fair. I mean, and again, the Frank Carsons, whatever, there will be a handful of people that's going to be important to, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just think from their perspective, you kind of go all right, what percentage of people are we taking care of by putting all this up there? Or making time to make sure it's posted or whatever. I don't know.
The most inside baseball Magic nerds ever. This guy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's fair. I'm not saying you shouldn't get stuff. I'm just trying to figure out, in their workload, where does that figure in?
Right.
I understand that they can come at me with the workload angle, but when they literally just open the floodgates and then close the floodgates, that to me said somebody went in and said, shut the floodgates. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And that was, I was like, damn, man, we actually kind of got all that info. And I thought that was really rad. And then it just kind of, just close that door. Let's go ahead and move on here to Desperate Ravings, where we talk about stuff that gets people a little wild, a little upset, as it were. And this past week, we got some sad news out of Owl Central Games. Now, Owl Central Games is known for running legacy events, as I understand it.
Yep.
And they were going to run a legacy $5,000 event on Saturday, July 20th. And after long, quote, this is quote unquote, after long in-depth discussions between our events team, store leadership, and entrenched legacy players, they noted that due to the state of legacy and the sentiment of local and regional players, their event is likely not to live up to expectations. and the pre-registration was probably very poor. They didn't say that's my guess, but they do say that's why we decided to cancel the event. And
Yep.
so basically, a lot of things they note here. It's clear that Wizard should have banned Grief from Legacy for the health of the format. I don't know why Grief gets the free pass. I don't know why Grief as a card has been okay for as long as it has been okay, quite frankly. But I do know that it is a busted Magic card, and you either ban every single one of those 1 black mana, return the creature back from the graveyard that died this turn to the battlefield, or you get rid of the problem. And I just don't see a reason at this point. Who's on Grief's side?
Or a way around it. Yeah.
Like, who's like, that's great gameplay. Get my 2 best cards when we start the game. Like,
I will say, I thought it was amusing when they put this announcement up, because I don't understand why you don't just say, like, hey, we asked our players, they all said they didn't want to play against Grief, and our pre-registrations were down. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to dance around it. Like, you don't need to make a PR statement. Like,
philosophical.
Just say what it is. I mean, we see it everywhere else. Like, we've seen other people saying that attendance is down. They're getting like 100 people for some of these like 2, 3, 5K events, right? Like, because nobody wants to play in the Grief battles. And I'm the ban stuff guy. Like, so if this is this big of a problem, cool, we can ban it tomorrow. I don't care.
For sure.
Like, I don't understand what we're worried about. Like, even the people that own Griefs are saying they understand and they expect to get banned. Like, I've seen people posting that, I signed up for the Legacy thing online to play. I played against 4 Grief decks in 5 rounds.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like nobody's happy. So, like, what are we doing?
You have to play it if you're playing in an event like this. So there's no choice, really. Because
I mean, in some events, it's 60+% of the field in some events.
Yeah. And like 37%, I think, is part of the metagame that listed here on MTG Goldfish. And that's ridiculous, quite frankly.
So for those of you who are unaware of Owl Central is a store out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I've been up there a couple times back when I worked for Tales of Adventure for Legacy events. That is Ken Adams' store, for those of you who are familiar with Ken Adams. So they know what they're doing. Like,
absolutely.
Vintage and Legacy experts made that store. So it is not surprising to see them on the forefront of doing something like this. And it should also speak to the veracity of their claim of why they're not putting the tournament on.
Events are about butts and seats. No matter what's around it, no matter the promo items, no matter who's going to be there, no matter what city you're in or what date it is, you need butts and seats or the event is going to fail. Full stop. And you have a metagame that is 40% Reanimator. That doesn't happen in events and formats that large. Like, to have metagames that rotate, you should never see percentages like that. Like, maybe 25%, but even
anything over 30 is already a concern.
Yeah, anything over 30, something's probably wrong.
Like, Force of Will being a two for one to take out a thing is acceptable and good in that format because it's reactive. Grief being a 2 for 1 yourself is proactive and gives you a body in the graveyard to then do a second time and put a threat on the board. So if Force of Will were a creature, it wouldn't even be as bad as Grief is.
Yeah, I'm just asking, who's in Grief's corner, right? Who's there, taking it to the mat and being like, Grief should be here because this gameplay experience is better than not having Grief as a gameplay experience. And like, I just think that whoever had designed Grief at the time they made it did not think, for example, that Wizards would continue to keep printing awesome 1 black mana, return this creature that just died. Yada, yada. Because those just kept getting better since Modern Horizons 2, right? Like, the ones mainly used were printed after that set came out. So I think there's a reason. And when you see an organizer do something to this degree, I think you need to just take notice.
You got to sit up and listen, for sure.
Right. These guys are for real. They know what they're talking about. It's not their first rodeo. And they know if an event is going to tank, and it's not worth it. You don't
I think that's
drive
also
into the hillside because you think you're pot committed.
But that's also why I would rather them have just used plain language, right? So it's clear, so nobody's guessing what the situation was or why. Just say, look, this is why we're canceling it. Like nobody wants to play right now in this environment with grief everywhere. And just call a spade a spade.
Pre-reg is bad, and we ask the players why, and they tell us because grief sucks. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's just as simple as that sometimes. You know, and it's weird sometimes when they kind of make it what sound like more complicated. You know,
Sure.
it's not complicated. I just
Nope, that's
don't
exactly what it is. Everybody I talk to that plays Legacy, like I even considered just going and playing a local Legacy thing, and I just went like, nah. like I was gonna bust a deck out and went, nah, I'm good.
with our mulliganing system the way it is, it makes it even worse. You know,
Yeah, that's true.
it helps you find that return grief thing easier because you only need about 4 cards or so to make that function, and then you've blown up your opponent's plan entirely, and then it's just playing off the
Yep.
top deck, and then we're just randomly randoming, and it's tough. So good luck, Wizards. I hope they do get the hint there. I really do. Let's turn the corner here to the finisher. Amy the Amyzonian shared a screenshot earlier this week with a poll asking, in so many words, which step of a Magic turn is the one you'd like to, quote, invite to sexy time, unquote. So, fellow co-hosts, tell me, defend your choice for your favorite SILF, Ruben.
This is my favorite joke I've ever written, I think. I would argue for the upkeep step because preparation is important. And I'm a big proponent of foreplay. And as most of you, and most of all, because it has a clear, delineated beginning, during, and end portion.
Nice.
Fair.
Power Dragon?
Well, I'd argue for the combat step, at least the way I do it, because not only that do you need good communication, but there's also little I enjoy more than showing off my mid-combat skills.
Hey, everybody loves a good combat trick.
Ruben, you had too much fun with this. Now, look, I have 5 kids. I ain't got the energy for extra turns, if you know what I mean. So my choice for the step I'd go with is the end step. Because once I've tapped all my permanents and cast all my spells and activated all my abilities, I always need to go clean up. Oh my God.
Dude, it's time to go. That's where you got to go get your sandwich in a juice box.
That's right.
Recharge
Go to your
a little
cleanup
bit.
step. You got to discard.
Yeah, you gotta take care of yourself.
You gotta clean it up. That's right.
Hooray!
That ends another live episode of Magic Mike's. Thanks for joining us here to discuss all things Magic. Thank you, Power Dragon.
Man, you are flustered. That's hilarious. But it's good to have everybody here and appreciate y'all listening.
Oh, thank you, Ruben.
This was a spicy end one like we haven't had for a couple of years. So I'm glad that we got this one. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you next week.
Because you got to remember, I don't read those jokes ahead of time.
Uh-huh.
That's live, absolutely no pre-reading,
That's
right
right.
off the cuff. So let's move here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, Mana Traders. Use the promo code MagicMikes at CoolStuffInc.com. Save 5% off your order. So our co-hosts, you guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmikes. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us on our exclusive member Discord, live on twitch.tv at Magic Mikes, live or taped on our YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at Magic Mikes Cast, and join our TikTok at Magic Mikes Cast, or join us here next week. Same time, same place for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.